So we need to give a few examples around this so that our viewers can then go to the next stage and create examples for themselves. Now, within the leadership journey, we've got a whole bunch of different things that we use to get across leadership topics. And a lot of these can actually be reused by our leaders in terms of a leaders lead learning concept. Maybe the easiest way of example to describe this is with the usage of the relationship map. The relationship map is a mega cool tool for mapping out all of the relationships that a team has within their organization. And I've seen it used a number of times by project managers and by sales leaders and by team leaders to kind of put all of the relationships that they have onto a big board and then discuss those relationships with their teams from the perspective to who do we need to give service, where are our relationships strong, where are they not as strong as they need to be, what do we need to do in terms of action planning for this group of people, that group of people, that group of people, how do we get access to these people or those people, and how does that change the way that we do our work? So the relationship map is a very, very cool learning mechanism. And then the people who do it will normally reflect on it once every 2 months or so. Once every 2 months, once a quarter, and they'll go back into the relationship map with their teams and they'll say, what has changed? How do we need to move forward with this? So that's an example of one of our tools from the leadership journey being used as a learning and training mechanism by leads within their organizations. So what we're going to do here is look at a couple of other examples from the leadership journey stuff that we do, but with the full recognition that in the real world, our participants are probably taking other skills that need to be learned and creating learning elements out of those.
So one interesting example is based on the GROW framework. The GROW framework, which is goal, reality, options, and will, which is a framework that is used in coaching, but it can also be adapted to a huge number of options. So if you want to use the GROW model as a facilitation method, you can set up a brainstorming meeting where everyone comes together and the leader says, we do a lot of brainstorming usually, but we never use the model. So now we're going to use the model. We will spend 10 minutes thinking about goals, 10 minutes about the situation, 20 minutes thinking about options, and 10 minutes for qualifying the options and deciding which way to go. And some criteria for qualifying the options could be how well they fit with the goals, what is easier to implement, what would have a bigger impact, and what would need less resources, and then decide on a way to go. You can do this with 5 topics once per month for 5 months, for example, and you can also base it on an example of SWOT analysis to develop critical thinking skills.
Okay. I saw it based on the SWOT example. So you're using it from the GROW example. We use the GROW model for leading with questions. It's that coaching framework that we looked at in a different clip. The SWOT analysis, everybody knows it. Nobody uses it unless you work in a very, very, strict and professional marketing department. Then the SWOT analysis becomes a method of strategic analysis, and young marketeers will be tasked with putting a SWOT analysis on the screen every week or so, and then justifying and defending their analysis and their next steps based on that. And that can be really very cool as well. The brainstorming approach that you were mentioning, have you heard of the Walt Disney approach?
I have.
It's very
with
cool.
Colored rooms, right?
With the colored rooms, yeah. And I've seen this done in a number of different ways as well. And the leader that I'm working with at the moment, he does every 2 months the Walt Disney approach. He gets a group of his people, takes them into room number 1. He literally has 3 different rooms, offices next to each other. Room number one is the brainstorming room. It's the room where everybody is allowed to have ideas, but nobody's allowed to judge or say what is right or wrong within a particular. Room number two is action planning. And then room number three is criticism of the plan. And so Walt Disney originally had a pink and fluffy room for the creativity, a black room for the negativity and the criticism, and a green room with traffic lights for the action planning. And so what skill does this develop? For the moderator, for sure, it develops moderation skills, which means if moderation skills is a part of your package and something that you want your people to be able to do, you can give them the moderation job behind that whole process. For the people going through the process, the skills developed, well, creativity on one side, separating creativity from judgment is a skill. Yeah. So very interesting processes, learning processes behind those examples.
So another example of this is using the team development cycle within this framework for developing people. So the team development cycle, of course, the idea that when a team is formed, it goes through 4 stages, and only in the final stage is it really performing. So using this model, what you can do is set up a series of points within each meeting that this team has, where you present them with the team development cycle. You put it in front of them and you say, is there anything we can do to improve our performance? And this one is not necessarily related to a very specific skill. It's related to a whole bunch of skills that come together that mean a team can work well together. So again, using this framework to provide a feedback loop and make sure that we're keeping an eye on the things that are really important for our development.
One of our colleagues uses the team development cycle specifically for what he terms putting the fish on the table. Speaking about the problem, honestly. And so the picture is in the office. There's a place where the Jourflix always happens. And if it's remote, then the team development cycle is on the whiteboard behind him. And they'll use the language, let's put the fish on the table. And that helps everybody to be clear and honest about problems as they come up and to speak about them earlier. The same person will also use the picture of the team development cycle to focus people's attention on the prototyping stage. And he'll often say things like, we don't have enough prototypes. We've only got 1 prototype to test. We need at least 2 or 3. Who's going to come up with something else? And so he tends to allow his development activity to go into those 2 areas. But from my perspective, exactly what you've just said, Mike, is more than enough. The general, how do we work together? How do we collaborate together with each other is a massive benefit from that particular usage of the model.
Another example is prioritizing by using Eisenhower's matrix. And you can do this in your team bi-weekly, in a one-on-one setting or in groups of 2. And you can have 3 important areas where you put your focus on. First, what did I achieve versus what did I plan? Estimated versus actual time spent on tasks. And how do I use time boxing? Now, this is, I'm not sure how related it is to management by objectives, Tim, but I think it has a clear link there.
And, to management by objectives or objectives and key results or any kind of balanced scorecard system or key performance or at the end of the day, simply an action plan and a to-do list with, what is it that I want to do? How long do I think it'll take me? And then how long did it take me? And so, going through that process again and again and again increases your ability of estimations and forecasts and makes you much more happy about making commitments to certain topics. Mike, you had an example about a presentation skills environment?
Absolutely. So, presentation skills is a very commonly developed skill, but also it can be certainly missed, especially if people always see it as a massive task that requires so much preparation. So, in terms of this model, what a leader could do, for example, is for every meeting, so for every jour fixe, for example, you could assign one person who's simply going to present the agenda. So it's a 2-minute presentation. All they really have to do is talk through, these are the points we're going to talk through today. But it really helps to develop their sense of confidence, this idea of being in front of people. And what you can also do is you can bring in a feedback process for that. So you can create a presentation skills feedback form, make this a pair work exercise so they get a feedback loop being built. And if you keep this going for a long time, you create this as part of your team culture, then within a year, you're going to reach a point where everybody is developing their presentation skills, everybody is developing their feedback skills, and you've created a climate where everybody feels comfortable being up in front of each other and being on that stage.
And you're creating a climate where your people are very, very happy to work for you because you are developing them all the time and in a very active and proactive way. May feel uncomfortable at the beginning, but certainly for team captains and direct leaders, this is something that you have a continuous capability of doing with your teams. If you're a lateral leader, this does certainly get more complicated. You don't have direct reports, so your need to develop people drops away. What's interesting, though, is that from a lateral perspective, very often you see gaps in organizational knowledge where you say, well, even though I'm not the person who can force people to learn stuff, I certainly am the person who can say, this is the stuff that we need to learn as an organization. So lateral leaders are much closer to skill deficits, especially functional and technical skills, than other people in the organization, and can do a lot to create learning and development programs for other people in the company. But of course, it is more challenging for them to do the feedback loop and to keep on track with those learning goals.